Good evening, welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. It's going to be a lot of people, in fact millions hope, a landmark day tomorrow when the Supreme Court looks at the issue of Article 377. The question is this: will the Supreme Court strike down Article 377 that makes gay sex illegal? If it is to do that, it will be an end to a process that's gone on for so many years. Finally, will there be justice for millions of people who believe that their sexual orientation shouldn't be the reason they are discriminated against in our country? That's going to be our big focus on this program tonight. Our second big focus at about 1:30, fuel prices. Now, we've been talking about fuel prices now for the last 10 days, where every single day fuel prices have gone up. Finally today, fuel prices of diesel and petrol have not gone up. But did you know that India actually exports refined fuel and diesel to 15 countries, where petrol in some cases is exported at 34 rupees a litre? Now, just contrast that with how much we are spending here in India. In fact, at today's rates in Delhi, it's 79.3 rupees a litre of petrol, but we export it to some countries at just 34 rupees a litre. That's going to be our second debate. The big question therefore is, what about taxes? Should the state governments and the centre bring down taxes, because there are so many of them associated with petrol and diesel prices? Now, our big focus, what a lot of people hope will be a historic verdict tomorrow in the Supreme Court, the verdict on Section 377. The Chief Justice of India heads a 5-judge bench to decide on decriminalizing homosexuality. The 5-judge bench will decide if Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code violates specific articles of the Constitution. Just to remind you, Section 377 was introduced way back in 1861. It criminalized sexual activities against the order of nature, including homosexuality. Now, the petitioners argue that this is against Article 14, which is equality before law, Article 15, discrimination, and Article 19, freedom to form associations, in addition to Article 21 as well, and of course the right to privacy, which is now a fundamental right. Now, the Supreme Court has said they cannot wait for a majoritarian government to decide on law if it violates the fundamental rights petition by members of the LGBT community, including the Sangeet Natak Academy Award winner Navteej Singh Johar, the journalist Sunil Mehra, the restaurateur Ritu Dalmia, the Nimrana Hotel chain co-founder Amarnath, the businesswoman Aisha Kapoor. The bottom line is this: will 160 years of discrimination finally end? We will know at about noon, perhaps a little bit before that, on whether tomorrow is going to be a real victory, not just for members of the LGBT community, but indeed for all of us as residents of, one would hope, a progressive India. Joining us now, Jerry Johnson, the gay rights activist. Monish Malhotra also joins us. Aishwarya Bhatti, the advocate of the Supreme Court, and Lalita Kumaramangalam, the director of the India Foundation. Thank you all very much for being with us. Father Stanley, the director of the Delhi Archdiocese, will be joining us in a few moments as well. Jerry, let me come to you first. Is this really the moment that you've been waiting for, that tomorrow would be a day of liberation after a struggle that's gone on certainly in your lifetime and for so many people across so many generations?
Yes, Vishnu. I mean, this takes me back to 2013, when again we had another day when we were waiting for tomorrow to come for another verdict. And so while we are very confident this time, and we are quite happy about what the outcome might be, but I don't want to jump the gun and have premature celebrations, because we've been burnt once before. But the whole world is watching this very historic moment. It is a historic moment for Indian democracy, and also for all the Commonwealth countries of the British Empire that have this law as a horrible legacy of the colonial empire. So it's something that everybody is watching. The world is watching for the wrongs to be righted by the Supreme Court tomorrow.
Aishwarya, just a brief question to you, and we'll discuss all of this at length. August 2017, there was the right to privacy, which has been deemed a fundamental right. The Supreme Court said, and I quote, "Sexual orientation is an essential attribute to privacy." In your legal interpretation, does this in many ways pave the way to decriminalizing gay sex?
Not just pave the way, Vishnu, it actually sounded the death knell then and there. In fact, the Honorable Supreme Court in the privacy judgment even went on to fault the ratio that was there in the earlier judgment of the Supreme Court in Nas Foundation, where they said that because it's a minuscule minority, therefore the court need not go into it. And then the Supreme Court in privacy judgment said that because now this right has been elevated to and recognized as a fundamental right, which is right to privacy, and a consensual relationship between two adults is something which is covered in the ambit of privacy, therefore it does not survive. And they went on to say, but a curative petition is pending and the matter is before the court, so we will not go any further. But that was the death knell, and I think what is to come tomorrow will only be a logical conclusion to what was then.
Lalitha Kumaramangalam, do you believe that tomorrow, of course, it's in the hands of the court, the Supreme Court, it's a bench of the
Vishnu,
Supreme Court
sorry,
which is actually hearing this.
Can
you hear me now, Mrs. Kumaramangalam?
It keeps getting broken off, but yes, I got the gist of what you're saying.
No, I'm just trying to ask you a very basic question. Does the BJP look forward to a positive verdict in the Supreme Court whereby gay sex is decriminalized? I know it's not an option that you have, so because it's going to be a court verdict one way or the other, but would the BJP welcome the decriminalization of gay sex in this country?
Vishnu, I'd like to make one thing very clear, that I'm not here as a member of the BJP, though I am one. I'm here because I have worked with the LGBTQ community since '91, when I started work with communities on HIV prevention. I have friends amongst those communities, all of them. I respect them and I understand and empathize with what their demand is. Now, from the point of view of, the question you asked me about the BJP, from what I remember, the law minister of the present government, Ravi Shankar Prasad ji, had said on one of the national television channels that the government of India has has submitted to the Supreme Court that the government of India has no objection to decriminalizing consensual sex between two people of the same gender if they are adults. So I think from that point of view, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, ma'am, go ahead.
Hello, yeah, sorry. So from that point, of view, I don't think the Supreme Court will has found any resistance or any opinion from the current government which says that sex between two people of the same sex or the same gender should be criminalized. I think the only thing they have said is that it has to be consenting sex between adults. That's all.
No,
so,
though the BJP, ma'am, yes, when Shashi Tharoor tried to bring in a private member's bill in Parliament, the government didn't allow it to go through. There were objections to it. So is there a change now in attitude, in belief and in recognition to the rights of millions in this country?
There were objections.
So what has changed fundamentally?
Vishnu, there were objections, and let me say this, that I can't say that everybody from the so-called right, and that's just a word that a lot of people use. I can't say that everybody who has felt that gay sex is a criminal activity will today say no, it's been decriminalized, so we support it. But I do know that the government of India today has said that if it is consenting sex between two adults, we are not going to say that it's a criminal activity. The Supreme Court should rule as per, as per their feelings or their opinions on this matter. Now, I'm not here to speak for everybody from any side.
No, I understand that there would be a wide variety of views on this particular issue. There have been for a very long time. But I think the reason why we are discussing this, the reason why so many in India want this to go through is because it's 2018, 160 years of oppression for a gigantic community within our country just has to end. And and one would hope that attitudes and sensibilities which are utterly passé and make no sense would change. But ultimately, of course, it's what the Supreme Court has to say. Manish Malhotra, the double standards have always been a key part of this entire debate. When you look at the entire issue of section 377, the fact that carnal intercourse is against the order of nature, now penetration by itself is considered carnal intercourse. But then when it comes to oral sex between heterosexual people, there has never been any legal action. How many people have, heterosexual people have been locked up, put behind bars for oral sex? So there was always this discrimination in how even 377 itself was interpreted.
Correct. Logically speaking, a law is to protect the citizens, but this particular law has been used as a tool of harassment for time immemorial. I would look at it in a sense that, let's say that we put ourselves in a big pickle 160 years ago, and let's hope that tomorrow we can just swallow the last bite of it and throw away the jar and maybe return it to the old grandmother who passed it on to us. And let's hope we are able to just pay our last installment and move into a future, step into a future which is much more inclusive. Of course, the religious communities and other fanatics have their point of view, but that's all right. We don't run this country based on public morality. We have our faith in constitutional morality, and tomorrow is the day we shall find out whether we are ready to really step into a much more expansive future.
Whether we are ready to step into 2018, I think that's the question. Are we ready to step into 2018 and wake up from our prehistoric slumber? I think that's the larger issue here. Father Stanley, thanks very much for joining us. If the Supreme Court decides to strike down Article 377, would you and would members of your church, of your archdiocese, welcome what the Supreme Court says, if they choose to decriminalize gay sex?
That's a very complicated question. Anyways,
really? Seems quite basic to me, sir.
Why is that complicated?
The thing is, we would not be able to say kind of a welcome on such a decision of the Supreme Court, because basically it's a civil issue which the state has to take a take a decision on it because of the state involvement. From the moral point of sight, the church would not appreciate what is happening in this situation. So, though we don't want to brand anybody or label anybody on any kind of their sexual orientations, but taking away the criminality, many countries have done it and the church did not say anything. So because the church has the freedom, the country has the freedom to decide on its civil laws. The church will not involve into that activity. But concerning the morality of the situation, even in the heterosexual relationship, the church will definitely continue to be what.
No, but Father Stanley, what you are echoing is a time-honored view which has been rendered utterly obsolete in even Christian majority countries. Countries where same-sex marriage is no longer even, people don't even speak twice about it, where same-sex marriage is allowed, where gay sex is considered absolutely normal. Why then in India must we still abide by this morality argument? I mean, whose morality is this?
No, that's what they say. You need to see the church as a kind of a individual's personal choice to follow a religion. And the state has got its own functional methodologies which they take care of it. The criminal situation, if the state wants to call it a criminal, the church will not come out and say, please don't call it criminal.
No, I understand that. I'm not suggesting for a moment that you're going to, go against what the Supreme Court says. Even if you were to, it doesn't make any difference. But I'm just trying to talk about morality. As a member of such an important faith in our country.
It's fine, we won't go to the church to get married.
No, but Father Stanley, is it not time for members of your diocese to welcome change, to appreciate difference, and to recognize that that we've got far bigger issues in our country to deal with than just stigmatize people on the basis of their sexual orientation?
That's what very clearly I said. The church will not stigmatize or label anybody on their sexual orientations, but the church would not be very happy to welcome this kind of decriminalizing the homosexual tendencies. But the morality part of it will continue to be there, and the church would definitely stand on its ground very properly. And that's what continuously being said, that individual choices. Okay, you have either you practice your religion or don't practice your religion. A person says, I'm a Christian and I'm a gay and I'm a professed gay, I wouldn't call that person as a Christian. If you are a real Christian, you are somebody who practices the parameters within which you are supposed to live.
No, but those parameters have changed. Those parameters haven't been changed, have continued to be redefined. In society after society around the world, Christian societies where gay sex is recognized as being normal. So I understand what you're saying, but all I'm trying to say is that there is incredible precedence for this view to be changed.
True. But the problem is going to happen is the next level. Now, like as you said very clearly, many countries have made it legal. Gay marriages have become legal.
Yes.
That's going to be happening in India as well. So those who want to get married legally, they would have marriages in their civil offices, not in the church. Church would definitely continue to stand where it is.
I think that's an important point that you raise. I mean, what happens next? Aishwarya, I'm not sure we are getting ahead of ourselves. Perhaps we are, but it's nice to be talking about the future when there is so much hope. Decriminalizing gay sex, assuming that happens, would same-sex marriage necessarily be the next step?
Well, it has been argued, the petitioners did try to make those arguments, but the bench made it very clear that they are only going to deal in this matter with the decriminalizing of the same-sex relationship. So, I think it is normal to expect that is the direction that it would go into, but it's still going to be a long journey. And, you know, I do have one point to make that you've been highlighting, 157 years. I mean, our entire Indian Penal Code is something that the Macaulay made in 1860. So the entire penal code is of that. Now, Supreme Court is interestingly also, you know, seized of another very archaic issue of adultery. Now, that is also something that is, of course, I'm sure we'll have the debate in the next 15 days on that judgment as well. But the good parts have to remain. Indian Penal Code is a beautiful piece of legislation which has stood the test of time. What needs to be changed, what needs to be amended, must be amended. That is the beauty of law. That is why we have courts.
Lalita Kumaramangalam, heterosexual partners, even if they are not married, have rights. So, you know, I mean, it's perhaps not the same rights as if you are married, but you still have rights. You have rights.
Even their children have rights today.
Yes, and therefore, when assuming that gay sex is decriminalized, would relationships also be made legitimate? And in other words, would gay partners have the same rights as heterosexual partners?
If you're talking about
rights
marriage,
in a relationship,
I'm not sure about that.
Rights in a relationship.
As Aishwarya has pointed out, the Supreme Court has, the Supreme Court has very clearly said that at this point of time, they are not going to be looking at rights of gay partners or partners who have a live-in relationship if they're from the same gender. I think they are only looking at the legality of the relationship itself. That is the act of same sex between between two people of the same gender. So, as Aishwarya ji pointed out, the petitioners have already talked about this for a long time. I know Anjali very well. So, I mean, this has also been one of the demands that has been asked for a change in the law. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to deal with that in this instance, but the fight will continue. So, I am sure that at some time or the other, we must look forward to the fact that yes, they should also have the same rights.
Monish, again, a huge assumption that the Supreme Court chooses to strike down or to read down Section 377. If indeed that is to take place, then, you know, the battle in many senses is still not completely over. The rights of partners who live together, you know, then the entire issue of gay marriage, these are issues which will continue, you know, to be problems, because there's no clarity on what will ultimately be accepted. It's just gay sex now, which one would hope it would be decriminalized by the Supreme Court.
Well, let's put it this way, it's not a problem, it's a pathway to a possibility. Let's put it in a sense that It's equality 101. And what occurs after that, it really is a journey from here onwards, because right now we're just kind of fighting to decriminalize the identities of the LGBTQIA communities and to kind of remove the stigma and the label of criminals of this community, of our lives. And then once this journey begins, of course, we understand we're not going to get it on a platter, but who knows, maybe we will. We are not going to stop making our demands till we actually really reach the state where equal really means equal.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, how is the battle going forward also going to really be about dealing with social acceptance? That's always been the issue. There are viewpoints which are antiquated, viewpoints which are hardline, viewpoints which are absolutely rigid. So even if you were to have the law with you, the process of actually winning acceptance would continue to be a huge issue.
Vishnu, I think let's try and remember what this case is about. Really, this case is about individual human beings wanting to have the freedom to love each other. That's all this is about. Let's not try and group ourselves into the LGBT versus the heterosexual and therefore plead for rights one step at a time. Let's decriminalize identity first and then look for marriage and then look for partnership benefits. At the end of the day, we are all human beings with desires. We forget that one of the petitioners, Navtej Singh, is in a romantic relationship for, I think, more than 25 years. And that is a long relationship that is criminalized in this country. So, yes, I mean, there is a huge battle to be faced in the socio-cultural space. But let's look at ourselves in front of the law as equal individuals who all deserve equal rights, whether we are heterosexuals or whether we are homosexuals. The socio-cultural fight is definitely a big one, but that is something that we will negotiate one-on-one with our families, with our friends, with our colleagues at work. I mean, those are communities that we can work with, we can negotiate, and then we can perhaps find our own spaces that we can live in or thrive in. But when the law criminalizes us, that is creating a whole class of different kinds of citizens.
I just want to briefly go through a timeline of this, and Lalita Kumaramangalam, tell us tell us a little bit about the experiences of the individuals who you've been working with as they went through these legal highs and lows. 2009, the High Court decriminalized gay sex. It was seen to be an incredible judgment. But then in 2012, the Supreme Court overruled that judgment. In 2014, there was a review petition which had earlier been filed. That was squashed. In 2016, 5 petitioners directly impacted by this moved court. 2017, the Supreme Court upheld the right to privacy. What happens tomorrow, we'll know tomorrow. But throughout this process, how has it been an incredibly tiring and difficult journey for members of the LGBTQ community? Lalita Kumaramangalam.
Vishnu, let me tell you a corollary. Women in this country, throughout the world, in fact, just like the LGBTQ community, have been fighting for centuries for their rights. It is a very difficult, it's a very tedious, it's a very painful fight, exactly like much what the LGBTQ community is going through. And we are nowhere near winning that fight, which is exactly, again, the same is happening with this community. Perhaps that's why it's easier for many women to empathize what people from these communities go through and what they face. Unfortunately, society throughout the world is very hypocritical. So are a lot of religious norms, regardless of the religion. I'm not, again, this is why I said very clearly, I'm not here talking as either a politician or a former head of the NCW, etc. I'm here as a person who has personally seen and interacted with people, both women and members of the LGBTQ community, who are wonderful persons, but who have been, for some reason, tortured, discriminated against, etc., stigmatized especially, because of, either them being women or them belonging to a community that so-called, doesn't fit into the so-called norms of society and religion. So, I think that they have a very long battle still ahead of them. I do hope personally that tomorrow we have good news which turns over one of the most archaic laws that still exist in India. Because as Aishwarya pointed out, the law should be a living thing. It has to respond to changes in society. And society has changed in many ways. So I think the Supreme Court, I hope the Supreme Court would respond favorably and move along with the times that we need to do as a society.
Aishwarya, how is it that we still have section 377 when in fact we've got extremely progressive other articles in our constitution? Article 14 guarantees equality, Article 15 protection against discrimination, Article 21 the right to life and liberty, Article 19 the right to freedom of expression, the right to privacy now is also a fundamental right. How do we have all of that and then something which seems to go against each one of these articles?
Vishnu, you don't need a lawyer to tell you that. I mean, I personally think we are a country of so much of diversity, not just in culture, religion, language and ethnicity and everything else. I think we have huge diversity everywhere else. I mean, we are still in a country where we don't have a uniform civil code. What do you talk about anything else? I think Lalita ma'am was right in pointing out the struggles of the seemingly weaker sections, the seemingly marginalized sections. It has been a long fight for a lot of these groups of people, and yes, there are individual cases of excellence in these marginalized or fringe groups also, but as a class there is a lot needs to be done, and this hypocritical nature of our society a lot stems from patriarchy. We still don't want to give equal rights to our women, and all the religions resist that. It's not just one particular religion or other. All religions resist uniform civil code tooth and nail, and we are living in 21st century. I mean 2018, what to talk of anything else. So lot of diversity, but a beautiful way ahead. Struggle is going to be there. I'm sure we will overcome.
Jerry, how have terms like against the order of nature, which Article 370, that's the basis of Article 377, how has that really defined the problem, in that against the order of nature as a phrase itself is so decisively vague that it's this phrase itself which has brought so much angst, so much hurt and so much discrimination to members of the LGBTQ community?
Yes, correct, Vishnu. I mean, that phrase, one, it is ambiguous. Two, it is a height of Victorian conceit to imagine that human beings know what is the order of nature and what goes against the order of nature, as if in some way we are implanted from out of nature and we've been put onto this world. I mean, it comes from a very Judeo-Christian mindset. It is a Victorian point of view. And it is something that, doesn't make any sense, doesn't have any relevance in our world, neither today nor did it ever make any kind of sense throughout its history. So we need to understand that sexuality is not just about procreation, it's also about desire, it is also about love. I mean, our entire bodies can be put into the service of expressing love. It is not just a matter of certain parts of our body that fit together. I mean, the Catholic Church should be the last to come on this platform and talk about morality in any sense, given what kind of things that they are struggling with around the world. So these notions of against the order of nature and what is against morality are antiquated, to put it mildly, completely and flatly wrong and even immoral, to actually put it accurately.
Father Stanley, then there is the entire issue of science as well, and in as much as you would argue that the basis of your existence is faith, you cannot deny the import of science, and there is science behind this. The central argument which is made is that it's not something which you just decide overnight, to adopt your sexuality. You are born with that sexuality. There is a scientific basis. Simon Levy, the neurobiologist, in 1991 did a study of the brains of 41 cadavers. The brain of homosexuals was smaller in terms of the size of a cluster of neutrons. It is innate, it is not a choice. There is science behind this as well. How does one continue to deny?
Do we have a categorical statement on this? These are basically hypotheses that's going around, right? So you
how is it hypothesis?
Group of sample,
it's not hypothesis.
People and
absolutely
decide
not.
And have a research and make a statement.
No, but Father, this is not hypothesis.
Proof.
It's not hypothesis.
A categorical, factual thing has to be.
You don't wake up. You don't wake up and decide that you are gay one day or you are heterosexual the next. It's something which is what you are. It's a part of you physically. It's not just a construct, a sociological construct. How do you deny this? There is science behind this.
No, sir, it's very simple. I'm not denying science. I said science. It has to be categorically proved. not some certain hypothesis, some kind of a people, a few sample has been taken.
But Father Stanley, even if science tomorrow categorically proves it for you, for your satisfaction, will you change 2000 years of Christian morality on this basis? I doubt it. I highly doubt that 2000 years of Catholic morality will change. I mean, it's not like you respected evolution with Galileo.
We respected evolution by Galileo. What do you say? It was the church who proposed first the whole concept of evolution concept. One of the Jesuit priests. So please understand before you say Galileo's issue, Copernican issue. When the church realized there were mistakes, church has come out to say wrong. It has nothing to do with the morality.
Are you willing to reverse Christian morality based on science?
I am not willing to. Morality is different, science is different. Both of them are based on faith itself. You cannot ask morality to be changed based on science. Science has nothing to do with morality.
So hence proven that the Catholic Church is immune to scientific proof.
How can you say that? The church is the first one to uphold science factors.
No, but I quoted science to you, and there are many other studies. This is just one random study which I did.
You can talk to me.
But Father, this is there is, you know, let's not get.
Yeah, he's dragging in arguments which are not important, relevant to this topic.
No, Father. Most respectfully, Father. These are relevant arguments. If it's being considered in the Supreme Court, I would assume that they are relevant. But I think the more important point, despite your views, and everybody may have their view, is, Father, tomorrow, if the Supreme Court strikes down Article 377, would you encourage members of your church, of your diocese, to respect a fellow citizen irrespective of their sexuality? That's the bottom line, respect.
See, that's what precisely I began my statement in the beginning. We will not label anybody on their sexual orientation.
No, sir, it's not labeling, it's respecting.
Yes,
that's clear? Why I'm asking the question again.
Yeah.
You said labeling, you know, I mean, what do you mean label? I mean, we are all human beings, right? We are all children of God, right? Whichever faith we are from.
No doubt about it.
Right. So then why label?
The church
why not respect?
You are a heterosexual, don't come into
the church. So Father, you won't.
You are a homosexual, don't come to the church.
Father Stanley, will you ask members of your faith to respect members, other human beings, irrespective of their sexuality? Yeah. Will you, Father, ask members of your faith to respect people irrespective of their sexuality, or whether they're gay in this case?
That's all the time, my dear.
Okay,
what are you asking that question? The church is somebody who respects human rights at the most important place. The church is going out to help people who are in need. The church never discriminates. You understand that very well.
Thank you so much, Father, for clarifying that issue. I hope that sense of respect goes beyond what people of different faiths actually believe in. It's something that India comes to terms with, not just, and there's so much to be done. I think that really is the issue. In the workplace, in social scenarios, you know, it's just it's what happens tomorrow, if it works out for members of the gay community, will be a huge battle, but still the battle ahead may be even larger. I'd like to thank all of you very much for joining us. We'll take a short break and we'll come back with something completely different. Finally, after 10 days, there is no hike in petrol and diesel prices. But did you know we sell petrol and diesel at considerably lower prices abroad?